All right.
All right, Doug.
Hey, buddy. All right, so this is Doug. I'm Doug. This is Chris Hawk. Chris is joining us in one of the simple way houses of the new monastic community called the Simple Way. And Chris and I are going to tell you what his book is about. We're going to talk about ideas in the book, and then we're going to argue over a couple of the big points of it.
Yeah, I'm all for it.
And I'm going to be evangelized by you into your perspective.
Okay, I will try to convince
that I
you.
currently don't hold.
All right.
All right, so the name of the book is From Willow Creek to Sacred Heart.
That's right.
And the subtitle is what?
It's an unfortunate subtitle called Rekindling My Love for Catholicism. And re means again, and I never had a love for Catholicism.
Okay.
And it reminds me of Thomas Kincaid. But I fought, my publisher on that, but seeing as I'm not a bigwig, can't win everything.
Because rekindling, that sounds a little...
Sounds Thomas Kincaidian in the sense of let's all feel warm about something. But for me, my engagement with Catholicism isn't necessarily warm. Actually, the real core of my engagement, as I'll talk about later, is about violence, murder, torture, death of God kind of questions. So it's not too fuzzy and warm.
Okay, so people who would know that those two names, Willow Creek and Sacred Heart, represent two Christian communities. One in Barrington, Illinois, that was a part of your teenage and young adult faith life, and one in Camden, New Jersey, Sacred Heart Catholic Parish, Catholic community, where you now currently live.
That's right.
So tell us what's this book about? Why did you write it? What are you doing with this thing?
Right. Well, it's kind of like two rails of a train. Like the two parts of it are both my journey from the sort of comforts of suburban life and moving into Camden, like a very tragic and terrible place in many ways, and then also this movement from Protestant evangelicalism into the Catholic Church, which in its own challenging way is corrupt, full of problems, and atrocious in its own sense. I joined it at the height of its pedophilia scandal. I had no kind of rosy lenses.
The Catholic Church as a whole, not this particular kind
No, not this parish, but the whole, international scandal. And so, for me, it's this sort of two-part sense of engaging utter hopelessness.
And I think, we've had a conversation about a year and a half or 2 years on some of these things. I think that part of your argument for Catholicism is parallel to the argument that you want to have about places like Camden, which is the gospel is most alive in dark and forgotten and otherwise discarded places. So I think you really make a big deal out of the fact that the Catholic Church isn't all that, and that's precisely the place where one would find the kingdom of God.
I mean, let me tell a few stories about that. I mean, but sometimes when people say, did you run into some great people that made you become Catholic? And I say, unfortunately, I met some great people that brought me into the Catholic Church. And by unfortunately, I mean I was able to let some of the, superficial pluses of nice people, beautiful liturgy, sort of be my draw. But those things come and go. Good people, good liturgy, those come and go.
Boy, that's interesting. I hear a lot of people who get into some version of Catholicism, Orthodox Church or Roman Church or the Anglican Church, and they do talk about the beauty and the simplicity of the Mass or the liturgy makes sense of my world, but you're doing something different.
Well, I mean, those can be good, but my point is there's something about engaging where God isn't. Because one of the fashions in the church is to say, find where God is at work and go join. Which, I mean, there's some coherent logic to that. I understand why they're saying that. But to me, it's just as reasonable to say, find where God is utterly, apparently absent. Find where things are totally messed up. Find where the darkness is, and why don't you go there? And so somebody said to me, because I was attending both Sacred Heart and Brethren Church right when I first started, and I couldn't handle the piety of going to church twice on a Sunday. So I wanted to opt for the local Catholic option, because it was there. And I went to this Brethren pastor, and he said, well, obviously God's next thing is not going to be to move through the Catholic Church. I think you should covenant here.
Gotcha.
I thought, where do you get this privileged information of like the next big thing?
Yeah.
And I thought, if anything, why not love a dying church on its deathbed?
Yeah.
Isn't that Christianity?
Isn't that great? And like we're not going to agree on everything here, and a couple of interesting topics that we'll disagree on. But I do think that you're really onto something about this notion that this is going to be my words, not yours. See what you think of it. That there are no places that are absent of the work in the kingdom of God. No matter how one describes those, a better version of Christian faith would tell us there are no places void of the kingdom of God. So for those, that would be my language, not yours. You don't need to take it yet. I'm sure you will someday when the scales fall from your eyes.
Yeah, and once I get my act together.
When the Lord brings to you the fullness of understanding. But rather, we could look at the world with the constancy of God's care and presence everywhere. And so this notion, which I also find intriguing, that we don't have to say like, well, there's places where God's active in the world and places where God isn't. Let's go to the places where God is active. I think that's a good critique.
Right. I thought actually when you were starting to explain that, you were going to say there's no place which isn't corrupt. Because for me, that's one of the things in interpreting the church. Like, one of the things I came to realize about my Protestant impulses was, this church is crappy, so let's go start a better one. And to me, it's like, so wait, you're going to be exempt from corruption here? So it's not just that goodness is everywhere, but also darkness is everywhere.
Yeah, right. And I guess that's implied in my comment, right? That the thing that should matter is God's is it a part of God's life and agenda in the world? And because I would say everywhere, there are no privileged places. This is me, not your book, but there are no privileged places. There are no privileged times. There are no privileged ideas. Nothing's privileged over anywhere else. So God's activity is unbounded.
Yeah, so to me what the Catholic model does is it says yes in a way, because all matter comes from the very hand of God. Yeah. All matter is imbued with, it's not just matter can be sacred. No, matter itself is a miracle.
Yeah.
Like, matter is impossible. Like, what is matter? We don't even know. Like, you get to the molecular level, and we wonder even if matter is spirit, or if matter is, we don't even know.
It's energy,
We don't even know. And so it's, by perceiving, mystery in the very being of matter is a big Catholic thing. They're fighting against the Gnostics and the Manichaeans on that left and right. But the Incarnation introduces this problem of particular times and places being imbued with an extra insane amount of glory, i.e. the Incarnation. So you touch his robe and not just touch a piece of wood, and something special is there.
So everything has a minimalist level, and then some are supercharged or jacked up.
I mean, that would almost be a way of putting some of the logic of the Incarnation.
Yeah.
That everything is glorious, but God is fully present in this person in a way that is like a new category to us.
Yeah.
And so, God is everywhere. God is in every person. But also, what is the Incarnation?
But not equally.
Maybe in a way. I mean, you might even say that in ethics. We might say, well, any ethical person would, look and say, not everybody is equally ethical. Sure. I mean, we can all love people, but some people are better at it than others.
Okay, so you, one of your movements, and what you write about in the book, is moving from a Protestant view, and you were at a big 20th and 21st century Protestant, non-denominational kinds of church. Willow Creek, which you named, moving from that perspective to a Catholic view. So you made a conversion from one part of the Christian family into another. And if I hear you right, what you're arguing is, look, Catholicism has a more complete system than any other version. In fact, all other versions have chosen to cherry pick parts of the Christian history and authority and structure and used bits and pieces. And you find it distasteful that someone would go through the junk drawer and just take out the couple of things they want.
Like some of the saints, some of the rituals.
Or someone's going through the mixed nuts and they're pulling out the cashews,
right?
And they don't want to eat the hazelnuts or whatever. And you find that to be, first of all, a bit distasteful. And also limiting in a significant way. Like, if you're going to be Christian, you need to be Christian within the community that gave you Christianity. So you make this argument, if I hear you right, that Christianity was understood, generated, and custodianed, cared for by a community of people over the 2 millennia who still exist, and if you're going to be involved in Christianity, you should be involved in it with that community that has it in its fullness.
In a way, yes. I mean, now it's very hard to adjudicate questions of like the Catholic and the Orthodox, because some would say those are like the two lungs of the church. That it's like,
because guys like me are going to go, well, why are you Roman Catholic rather than Eastern Constantinople?
Right. But I mean, that's a significant division to me that I pray every day for a resolution to. But actually, the Eastern Orthodox, this might get too off on a tangent, but they even kiss the ring of the Pope.
Yeah.
But they say we give him a deference of reverence, but not of jurisdiction.
Oh.
But
that's a clever word.
No, but they'll meet him, they'll kiss his ring, and they'll say Peter's successor.
Yeah.
They recognize that Peter, mythologically or really going to die in Rome, is part of our story, and so his episcopacy, his bishop's seat, was there. But what's interesting is that church in Rome very, very soon began to be seen as the sort of cosmopolitan hub of as many Christian traditions around the world. So it wasn't about them being sort of about uniformity, but as much diversity was retained in Rome as possible. And in many places, they might not hold as much of the big, diverse treasure chest as possible, because again, Rome being more cosmopolitan had some of those effects. It's kind of natural in that world. So anyway, I mean, I think you do make a general word for what I'm saying is that, some are cherry picking out the Bible and saying, I want this part of church furniture. But it's like, well, who invented that book? Who ratified those documents?
Okay, so the next segment, your big argument really, though, isn't with the Orthodox Church versus the Roman Church, Catholic Church. Your argument is the kind of Protestantism that you have experienced and that many people in Europe and North America experience needs to rethink something. So the next segment here, I want to talk about that.
Okay.
Have you articulate that hard, and then I want to suggest that there's a way forward that doesn't require Protestantism nor Catholicism for Christianity, and I think we disagree on that. I want you to get on me about that.